events are something new, so there's all different ways to do them, but we all have been to a virtual event or seen a Facebook Live where, it's constantly buffering, you're having issues, maybe some speakers are not able to get through. So I just want to talk a little bit about bringing some branding and quality to your virtual event so that you can get that same kind of energy and feeling that you might get from any professional event that you're doing. So a lot of it is in the planning, and we're just going to go over a few tips on how to make that successful. So first thing is your speakers. Your speakers are your most important aspect of your virtual event. Now, virtual events are very different for a lot of reasons. One of those reasons is that most likely your speakers are speaking right from home, like I'm doing to you right now. So there are things you can do to prepare them and get that ready. First, I really want to talk about when you should start booking speakers, because virtual events are also different in the way that people perceive them, even people who are involved in them. So a virtual event, for some reason, people just don't have the same level of commitment and block out their calendar the way that they do with a live event. So that goes for your audience and also for some of your speakers. So you don't want to book your speakers out more than 6 months in advance. You want to kind of hit that 3 or 4 month mark, reach out to them, let them know what's happening, gauge their interest, but make your speaker wish list, but then start really confirming and getting all the information to them 3 or 4 months out. That'll give them time to really check their calendar, block out the date, and you won't lose them in the process of planning, because virtual events, as we discussed earlier this week, take less time to plan and put together. So you don't want to contact them a year out the way that you do for, say, a live event. You might want to get their availability, but try to confirm them 3-4 months in advance. The second thing you want to do is really about creating that quality experience with speakers and kind of training your speakers, right? Because a lot of people haven't done virtual events the way that they've done live events. So you're talking about speakers that have really been speaking on stage or doing Facebook Lives, but maybe they haven't done a virtual event before in the kind of formatted way that you're putting it together. So number one is giving your speakers a preferred equipment list. Now, this doesn't mean that they have to have it, but have something together where you can send your speakers when they've signed up, and you have a type of microphone that you can recommend, a video, a webcam that you can recommend. Maybe have them make sure that they have a strong internet signal. Just remind them of all the different things. Recommend a certain diva light or lighting situation. Make sure you put that list together, because a lot of times on virtual events, especially now when they're coming up really quickly, you're seeing speakers with headphones, stuff like that. It doesn't really separate them from the audience. And with virtual events, you want it to be conversational, but you also want to have that energy and professionalism that you get on stage. So the perfect mix of that is to have them conversational, but also be prepared with the right equipment and the right setup. Speaking of setup, there's a little bit, I have noticed, a lack of branding in a lot of virtual events, especially if you're using like a Zoom software or something that's not specifically made just for virtual events. Like, there are platforms that we're going to discuss later in a future video about the different platforms that are out there. And there are some platforms where you can brand yourself all over the place. But if you're using something like Zoom or something a little bit simpler to create, then you don't have that automatic branding. So what you want to do is maybe create a common backdrop that speakers can use and send that out. Your cost of virtual events is relatively low, so that's not a hard thing to do, is to create a backdrop for your speakers and allow them to use that during the video and during the stream. You want to find virtually experienced people. Now, this doesn't mean that all of your speakers have to have virtual experience, but you want to make sure that at least a good number, probably 70 or 80%, I'm just throwing that number out there. And guys, a lot of this is stuff that I've picked up on podcasts and training. I've been training like crazy the last week or so, a couple weeks since this all, the COVID and everything, and people are starting to look more at virtual events. But a lot of this is just my own observations. And so, there's no definite answer, but this is what I've seen and what I would like to see happen with virtual events. So creating a common backdrop is a good idea, in my opinion, to have your speakers unified. rehearsal, you guys, you have to do some kind of rehearsal. It doesn't matter if you schedule a dress rehearsal and you all go over 5 minutes of your presentation, or you just walk through it and do introductions, but your MC, your speakers, they all need to get comfortable kind of having this virtual event experience and knowing when they're going to come on, doing some tech testing, making sure that they're able to use the software. Especially, your MC is responsible for introducing people. And we don't want, when you're at a live event, your MC is telling a personal story and they're on stage and they're walking around and they're feeding off the audience. Your speakers are doing the same thing. A lot of these speakers, they're used to feeding off an audience, getting feedback. So in order to get used to being on a virtual event, some of them will show up, even your MC might show up and they have index cards with introduction tips, they have notes, but maybe they haven't really practiced before. Whereas at a live event, they're practicing, they're walking the stage, they're seeing what the room setup is. So it's super important, I think, that you have some kind of rehearsal so that it comes off naturally and it doesn't feel forced. So that's another thing. Your speakers also should know that you want, even if you're using slides, you want some FaceTime as well, because watching slides in a program is not the same as watching a person. So in order to create that excitement, you don't want people to be reading slides for a full 30-40 minute session. You want, the speaker to be speaking and then having some slides. And my friend Wendy, who's also an event coordinator, she's a fellow mastermind member of mine, she was talking about, you might want to add some animation to your slides too. If you are using slides, you don't necessarily want animation at a live event. You want to click through, people are looking at you, not the slides, right? But if you are doing slides on a virtual event, your face gets replaced, the slides get put up there, and so you want them to be interesting and exciting. So add some pictures, add some videos, give them something to look at when they're not looking at you. So just going through my notes here. See, this is why you need a rehearsal. So the other thing you want to think about is your actual audience and the levels of pricing that you're going to offer. So a virtual event is going to be a lower price point than a live event. So what you really want is to gain some numbers. And to do that, you want to have different levels of pricing. You don't want just one price for your event. And we do this in live events too, but it's even more important in virtual events because you might want to give someone free or lower price point access for a certain thing to get people interested in the event and build momentum. But then you always want to be upselling them, maybe giving them access to the recordings, maybe giving them access to certain breakouts that nobody else has access to. Maybe you want to do a cocktail party or a lunch and learn where it's limited amount of people in there. They get a more intimate setting. You're doing it face to face conversationally, and it's not part of the larger event, and that could be another price point. But you definitely want to have levels so that people can choose their experience. So the final tip for creating a successful virtual event is to just really have fun with it and just prepare for it the way you would a live event. You don't need as much time, but you do need as much preparation. Have a checklist, go through it. You can throw virtual events together really, really quickly, and that's awesome. That's one of the best things about them. But make sure that your speakers, your MC, your DJ, if you're going to do music, they're all prepared and they've all done a quick run through with you so that you can gauge and give feedback to what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, if you're hosting the event, it's your event, and you want to make sure that there's commonality, there's branding throughout, that people feel that they can, trust each person as an authority in their topic. And even though it's a more intimate conversational feeling because you're talking, your speaker might be sitting down, they're not on a stage, they're not unreachable, that's a bonus. But you also want them to have that professionalism. And it's not that they don't normally naturally have that, but you can prepare them and take care of any issues that might come up along the way if you actively try to give them feedback and help to make that happen. So I hope this is all helpful to you.